2.
Welcome to Talk of the District. My name is Marguerite Reinberger. Not that many months ago, actually in the fall of 2011, I was reading my USA Today and turned to the section where they do short write-ups on the states. And in Minnesota, they talked about Stillwater area public schools flipped classrooms, and I thought that was so cool to see that. And I was very proud. I couldn't quick enough send an email out. I don't know who I sent it to, but you were probably too busy accepting fan mail at that point, Mike Dronin. And the guests here, including Mike, are very steadfast in their belief that technology is crucial to learning, student learning. And Mike was mentioned, Mike Dronin. Mike, would you please introduce yourself to the viewers and also introduce our guests?
I will. Thanks, Margot, and thanks for having us on the spot. We really appreciate it. I'm Mike Dronin. I'm the District Technology Coordinator here in Stillwater. This is my 7th year as District Coordinator in Stillwater. I'm pleased to have with us today Denise Cody, who is a 4th and 5th grade classroom teacher at Stonebridge Elementary School. Wayne Feller, who is one of our technology integration specialists. Wayne, as well as Kristen Daniels, another technology integration specialist, work very closely on a day-to-day basis with many of our teachers throughout the district, helping them to find clever and more sophisticated ways to help students really understand our instruction.
And Wayne Feller has had another background that
Wayne
many viewers would know.
He does.
Yeah.
You'll remember Wayne as one of our finest conductors here in the St. Croix Valley, both as an employee of Stillwater Area Public Schools, as well as some other orchestra work that he does with another ensemble as well.
Multi-talented.
Yeah, very much so.
Mike, to give an overall perspective, how does technology fit into the district's Vision 2014?
Thanks. Vision 2014 is about a lot of things. A couple of the things where technology really ties in very closely and intimately, powerfully as well, is 21st century skills. We believe there's a suite of 21st century skills that are best delivered through the use of technology. Another area that Vision 2014 talks about very strongly is the greater need to provide more in-depth and personalized education for our students. There are some clever things that we'll hear about in the next few minutes about how technology through the flipped classroom helps our teachers to have actually more time face-to-face individually with students and help to personalize those learning. So those two things, 21st century skills, personalized learning, very tightly aligned and tied into Vision 2014.
Well, I'm going to ask Wayne this because I understand you did a journal and basically buried yourself in the journal for several months talking about the flipped classroom. What is the flipped classroom?
In a traditional classroom, generally the teacher spends much of the time or most of the time delivering the content of that course to the classroom of students, and then a little bit of the time in the classroom is spent doing problem-solving activities. But the idea is that the students take their assignments, they go home, they do the problem-solving work in the home environment, and they bring it back to the classroom next day, turn it in, and the teacher corrects the papers and begins the cycle all over again. Well, the flipped classroom turns that around, and instead the children view the content before coming to class, so that when they come to class, they are already empowered with understanding how the concepts are constructed and how the problems are to be solved. So that when they arrive in class, instead of most of the class time being devoted to the teacher giving content to the students, the assumption is the students have the content initially and they begin their problem-solving work right there in class where the teacher is present as a professional coach. So the teacher then provides personalized opportunities to work with those individual students right there in class when they're working on their problems themselves.
Well, the flipped classroom itself is not new, that concept, but what the district's done with it is new. And will you explain how long that concept's been around and why the notoriety for the district, any of you?
Sure, very much. I mean, I would say the flipped classroom has been a part of practice by some teachers for 20, 30, 40 years.
And this is, you mean outside of our district?
Outside of Stillwater.
Right.
Whenever an English teacher said, hey kids, here's the book we're reading, read it, and when you come to class, let's discuss it. Really, that's kind of a flip, if you will. However, I'd argue, the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a couple very key things come together to make this a powerful instructional practice. And if it didn't have promised to truly make a difference, we wouldn't want to spend any time on it. But the data we're seeing coming out of our pilot is really suggesting this is making a significant difference and will continue to do so for kids. Those pieces that have come together, we think, are powerful and fairly easy to use video creation software, which is very approachable by teachers now. students that have grown accustomed to interacting with YouTube types videos and things like this. So our students are learning that they can learn from video, as well as a more pressing need that as our teachers understand it, and we'll hear more from Denise about this, our teachers will really say, if there's any way myself as a teacher can have more time to work individually with my students, I know that'll make a big difference for my students. And so this whole flipped classroom practice model allows teachers to have substantially more time one-on-one with students in class.
Now, the notoriety, because I want to really clarify, the notoriety that came to the district is what in terms of the flipped classroom? What did they do differently?
Well, there's several components right there. First of all, flipping the classroom in secondary schools, in colleges, in high schools has been around and it's been fairly popular over several years, and initiated in high school in Colorado. What Krista and I have done is to implement it with elementary students in grade 5 initially.
And that is the piece, right?
That's one of the main pieces. But the other thing that we are doing that I think is a bit unique is that we're networking our processes, and we're distributing the coordination of our activities across 5 different buildings, 6 different teachers in the initial pilot phase at least, and we're coordinating and sharing resources in a way that's providing a really network of support with all the teachers who are teaching the same content area and grade level, in exchanging resources in this process as well.
I think what's remarkable is that we have such great support at the district level. We have networked with a lot of flipped classroom teachers across the country and world, and most of them are really independent teachers in their classroom, figuring out that this is the way to go. But I think when Wayne and I came up with the idea, it just was, you know, getting the support of the district and then bringing it to the teachers and supporting them is unique.
So you two came up with the idea. I'm
Yes.
trying to
Well,
get, good for you.
For Stillwater, but I might want to tag along one more thing what Mike said too earlier about why it's unique and why we believe this is so powerful for 5th grade students, for 4th grade students, and so on. A few years ago, well, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when the internet was starting to catch on and so on, usually it was a phenomenon that affected adults, it affected college students, and affected increasingly younger ages all the time. As Mike alluded to now, what we're discovering is that young people are becoming quite fluent with technologies in the home environment. You see young people all the time who understand, in some instances, more than the adults do about how technologies work. So this access that they have, this fluency, this ease with which they react and interact with technologies in the home environment is opening up a world of possibilities for us that wasn't available to us even 5 years ago, and is creating incredible opportunities to transform the role of the classroom teacher from that of a master of content to that of a learning professional.
And I always love it when Wayne tells a story, because really it started in Denise's classroom when Wayne was sitting in the back of the classroom observing, and he had already come across the idea of the flipped classroom, but he was thinking about it while he was watching the students and Denise, and so that was really the beginning of the process.
Okay, Denise, your turn. Tell us where it's being utilized in the district, the flipped classroom.
Well, the pilot began with 6 5th grade classrooms, and then in January was expanded to now a total of 26 classrooms that are flipping in 4th and 5th grade. So I started out flipping my 5th grade class, and then I also teach a section of 4th grade, which I taught traditionally, standing in front of the class for most of the time, giving the lecture, teaching the lesson, and having the kids work.
What's that like? I mean, almost you're doing two, your personality has to change somewhat.
A lot.
You know, the whole
And
instruction
you're right,
method is
and-
changing.
And I taught them back to back. So my flip kids left, and in came my 4th graders, and all of a sudden I had to
And
be
you had
in
that
front of-
expectation
Yeah.
that they knew it,
Yeah.
probably, right.
Well, yeah. But it was hard because what I missed the most with my 4th graders is having that time. And so we'd get to the end of the time, or at the end of class time, and I would be done teaching the lesson, and I felt like I was sending them off not quite sure where everybody was at. Had a much better handle, I think, on my 5th graders you know, when they left where they were at.
When your colleague to the left was sitting in the background of the room, I mean, looking at, did you know what he was up to? And when he came up to you and said, I have an idea.
Well, I'm never quite sure what Wayne's up to, but I think he just sat back and observed for a while. Then he let me in on what was.
What'd you think of it? The idea, his idea to do it in the elementary school. I think it's just like,
I was
wow.
intrigued right away.
Sure.
Of course I had questions. My first question was, well, will we use the same curriculum? That was the biggest question. Because
and the answer was?
Yes.
Okay.
All the same curriculum, all the same lessons. But we just went through a big, we just purchased all this wonderful curriculum. And so my biggest concern was, I'm not comfortable, you know, deviating from the curriculum. So that quickly answered, because it's not at all. Well, then it involves technology. It involves a greater way of delivering instruction. So I was intrigued right away and said, sign me up.
Okay, you two are ready to jump on her. Go ahead.
Well, I'll go first and then pass it over to Kristen here. But one of the things that I noticed when I was observing Denise last spring is that here's a master teacher. Denise's experience, she's really good about teaching and really good about understanding what to teach and how to teach it. But what I was noticing is that as a teacher, when you're teaching that content in a classroom where you have a wide variety of students who, some of which get the material easily, some of the students struggle with material, Denise's role in that situation is to present that material at a single pace for everybody in the classroom, regardless about if the material is hard for them or easy for them. And so she would select a pace of delivery that would be slower than what I think the normal or average student, I should say the average student, would grasp it at. And my thinking was, what about the students who are not getting it or need more time and need the pace to be slower? What about the students that need it accelerated? What do we do about that? And is there a way that Denise as a classroom teacher can present the content where the students have more control over how fast that pacing is?
Why'd you choose math?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
No,
Matt, go ahead. You want to?
Well, I think.
All right, I'll step right here, which Freddie's doing.
Look at him. No, I was wondering.
One of the things we wanted to do, another thing that makes this pilot unique, to our best of our ability, nobody's doing this anywhere in the nation at the elementary level. So we said, if we're going to go to all this work and do it, let's see if it makes a difference. Let's set up a pilot. Let's compare how well students in the flipped environment do with students not in the flipped environment. One of the things we needed to control for was curriculum. Math had already finished their curriculum adoption several years ago, and so we knew we'd have teachers teaching the same curriculum. The only difference being which kids are in a flipped classroom and which aren't in a flipped classroom.
Yeah, so now in the traditional classroom, you know, there's a pacing calendar for the curriculum. Traditional and flipped classroom teachers have the same lesson with the same objectives on a certain day. Of course, there's a variance of a few weeks. But you know, our videos are created lesson specific. So the lessons presented, objectives are presented for the students. They watch a video, it might be 7, 10, 12 minutes long, but they're getting the same content and concepts presented to them as the traditional teacher is going to present on that day in the traditional classroom. And I think that's great that that was mentioned, because it made taking a look at the differences between the flipped classrooms and the control classrooms easier, because we're using the exact same curriculum.
For sure.
The interesting thing, I think, is that even though the curriculum is the exact same curriculum for the traditional classroom as it is for the flipped classroom, and that it's the same problems, it's the same content, and so on, there really is a lot of variety from one classroom teacher to the next on their style of teaching that exact same material.
Give an example, will you, Wayne, for those viewers who have not been in a classroom for a while, probably vast majority have never been in a classroom, you know, in the last several years. So tell us.
Yeah.
In fact, Denise, yeah, you go ahead. You must know what your colleagues, how they teach versus how you teach. Give us an example of the difference.
Well, some may bring in prior knowledge, their own stories about whatever the content might be. Some may, you know, we've been told that some teachers say it again and again and again, and they repeat themselves, and the kids pick up on that. But some bring humor to a lesson. It really can vary depending on the individual.
It makes it sound you have a stellar way of teaching. How do you teach?
You know,
That's
it's hard for Denise to say, this is why I'm such a great teacher, but it's easier for me to say that because I've been in the back and I've seen her teach.
Okay.
Denise has a way of understanding, a clarity of understanding what is needed. In other words, when she looks at a child and asks him or observes them doing a problem, for example, she can say, oh, I see what the issue is with you. This is why you're having the problem. It's a clarity of understanding where the roadblocks and obstacles are, and a clarity of explaining how that could be done better. And that understanding of the child and what that child needs is what makes Denise such a good teacher. Now, I've seen other teachers that have that same clarity of understanding, but the way that they go about showing the child how that problem should be solved or how they can become better at solving problems themselves will vary with addition of humor, or as was said before, life experiences, or even gestures and facial expressions, and with visualizations. We have a teacher who used a fist for a decimal point and then a dash like this, for example.
But what I was going to say is that with the flipped classroom, what we're seeing now is all the teachers are putting their lessons to video. And what it's doing is it's opening up everyone's classroom.
Yes.
So within the first couple weeks of our flipped classroom pilot, I was in a parent meeting, and one of the teachers said, I watched somebody else teach the lesson the other day, and a light bulb went off for me. I can teach that lesson, but this teacher did a great job doing it, and I'm going to borrow some of those techniques and concepts and incorporate them into my work.
And when we first began setting this flipped classroom up, we suspected that this might be an advantage, but we didn't understand at the time just how deeply this might impact all of the other participating teachers and classrooms of students. Because think of it from the student's perspective. Even if they love a particular teacher and the way that teacher teaches mathematics in a certain way, if they can see and hear and visualize the content through 6 different teachers, they have a perspective in understanding math in a holistic way that they might not have had otherwise.
Well, I got to tell you, the enthusiasm from all of you is just awesome to hear that.
And I would add that's true for our parents. When we've asked parents, what do you think of the flipped experience?
I want to get
parents,
into
they're saying, we're not crying at home at night trying to figure out how to do the math because we can see how it's done.
Parents or children.
Parents and children, yes, right. We can work with our son or daughter and help them to understand the math much, much better. And when we ask the parents, should we keep on flipping or not, almost universally across the board, please continue the flip process.
What were the reasons for the few who said no?
Did you guys follow up on those a little bit?
Yeah, I think really there was only a couple, and they were speaking on behalf of their student. There were some
on
not
their
sure.
son or daughter?
Okay. Right, yeah, on their son or daughter. And there were some not sures because they didn't know if it improved their child's performance. But it was remarkable, and the parent data was just one of the best because you want that nice time at home. Before, in the traditional classroom, the frustration, the parents don't know how the teacher taught it, and the kid says, no, that's not the way we're supposed to do it. So now the parents can peek in on the teacher and they feel comfortable with that.
One of the frustrations that parents had, especially during the first few months of our project, had to do with the streaming of the videos itself in the home environment, the technology components, because we had to learn some things during the early phases about how to best present this content in the home environment. We worked out a few bugs, and during that phase, if a child was watching a movie and then halfway through it didn't perform like the movie didn't stream like they wanted it to, the child would be frustrated. And I think these were some of the original complaints.
How did you deal with that, with the inequality of the technology within the homes? How did you first of all survey it, assess it, and then what did you do?
Well, at the beginning of the pilot, we did send out a parent letter home with the students, and on the back of that was a technology survey. So any parent or family that did not have access, we asked them to let us know. And there were a number of ways that we accommodated that family.
How so?
The number one way we do is we burn DVDs. Yes. So if you think about a DVD player, we'll play a DVD, but also a game system will play a DVD. And we also put them on iPod Touches. So if the student doesn't have access to a DVD player. Yep.
So when you think about it, it's like a 3-tiered approach. First approach, the very best way, is through high-speed internet access in home environments. And in this day and age, increasingly, that's a really high percentage in our school district.
In our district.
In our district, and it's getting higher every year. And as Kristen said, the backup plan is DVDs, and our third tier is the iPod Touches that we can check out if somebody doesn't have that. So all students receive the content.
Can I just jump in?
You can jump in whenever you want.
The reason that the best first option is to stream it, the video and not the DVD, is because there's always a quiz after every video. And through the DVD, the quizzes aren't available. So being able to stream it through high-speed internet is the best option. So then they watch the video, then they take a quiz, which those results go immediately to the teacher. So when my kids come in to see me, I can pull up and see how they did. Well, I can see who watched the video. I can see how many times they watched the video. We encourage them to watch it more than once if they are not sure of the content, after watching it once. And then we can see the score that they got on their quiz.
Right. I want you to brag, okay? And these other three would be more than happy to jump in, I can tell. But tell me what other media besides USA Today covered the flipped classroom?
Well, I had somebody from the St. Paul Pioneer Press come to my classroom
I
last
remember
fall.
your classrooms in the paper.
Yeah,
yes.
and then a photographer actually came to my house because I teach the 5th grade flip, and then I teach 4th grade traditional math. My son is in my 5th grade flip class, and my daughter's in my 4th grade traditional class. So
to see that dichotomy.
Right. So being a parent of it too, although I'm not the parent that struggles with how to teach their child.
Yeah.
My husband is a little bit. It's really helped him. He loves to be able to watch the video and not have to rely on me to
smarted him right up, didn't you?
5th grade math is hard. If you don't practice it, a lot of it you may not know or remember. And so for him to be able to watch the videos along with my son and know how to teach him or reinforce it or reteach it has been great. So being able to see it on from both sides.
So St. Paul Pioneer Press, USA Today, keep
Tribune.
bragging, you guys.
The Star Tribune did another story.
KSTP 5, KARE 11, Minnesota Public Radio.
We were published in the Journal of the Minnesota School Board Association this spring.
Terrific.
I want to pick up too, if you don't mind, on something that Denise said that I think is vitally important to underscore, and that has to do with the role of the parent, which is changing dramatically in the education of their children. When I first started teaching in the school district, the roles of the parents were to maybe come to an opening workshop, meet the teacher, and then show up at conferences and then see the grades and the report cards. Well, now we have opportunities to embrace parents in our learning practices like never before because of the cloud computing that we're doing with the children, not only with viewing instruction of movies, but with creating documents and collaborating. Parents have opportunities to participate in their children's education like never before. And the example that Denise used of watching the instruction of video is one example. Now the parent can see how that new curriculum is taught right along with their child and are in a much more empowered position to help their child with this kind of work.
Oh, I can't see how it doesn't help them. I mean, just incredibly.
Very
things
much
they
so.
hadn't even learned. How exciting for them.
We've had parents say, wow, you guys have some incredible teachers in Stillwater, because they knew that their own son or daughter's teacher was very good because they knew the teacher. But here's an opportunity to see these other teachers really shining. So.
And it's fun for me to learn from these other teachers. That was a hard thing for me at first, was to trust that my colleagues were going to teach it, maybe not the same that I would, but certain lessons, maybe there's tricks and tips that I would add in, and I would watch their video, so I knew what my kids saw when they came to me the next morning. For example, if there was a lesson on fractions, well, I hope they remembered to teach them this trick or this trick.
Sure.
And if they didn't, I'll do a small mini lesson, on that before they get started on it. But it was so fun to watch the way that these other teachers taught it, because I really learned from them too. And knowing that, sending my kids out saying, okay, watch this video tonight for your homework, no matter who teaches it, I'm confident that they're just getting a really good quality lesson.
Denise, is it too early to tell if the test scores are showing the results of the flipped classroom?
Well, based on our pilot, the scores were better, I think, statistically. With that short amount of time, we can't say that they're.
When will you know?
Another
year or?
Possibly, yeah. Okay. My own unit test that I did,
Yes.
my own comparison from last year, those tests were higher this year. My scores this year were higher. So certain things that trip kids up every year on particular topics, and some unit tests are harder than others, but overall, I've seen greater scores on my unit tests this year than I did last year.
There are lots of ways to measure effectiveness in addition to scores from standardized tests. And I mean,
but you know that's often the bottom line for a lot of
it is, but
and
it's also very important too. I mean, there's no getting around that. When you have this kind of data, it's important data to have to use strategically. Actually, we anticipated a dip in performance initially. When you put in a new innovative program, you have new technologies, you have things that can go wrong. Initially, you would expect somewhat of a dip before you see the gains down the road. Well, we didn't experience that dip. There was basically no statistical difference early on between the flipped classroom and the traditional classroom. But
except that they were getting through the material much quicker.
But they were getting through, the same classes, the flipped classes, were a week and a half to 2 weeks ahead of the traditional classes with the
Poor Denise probably said, well, where am I at here? You know, just constantly.
But it was exciting though, because
very exciting.
Because I can take kids that there are kids that take the whole time to finish, and those kids that finish, if they know it, they can show that to me that they know it, and they're moving on to greater challenges.
Terrific.
But I was going to say, in addition to the data that comes from testing scores, there's other kinds of assessments that we're using that are really important. For example, we're finding out from surveys that we are sending to the parents that we've got back from our FLIP study that the parents are telling us that even though the amount of time in the home is not increasing compared to last year on doing math, and even though the children aren't necessarily asking more questions of parents in the home environment, nevertheless, the children's attitudes, according to parents, are way better this year.
Important.
And their children's performance in mathematics is better than it was last year. And the same surveys are telling us that our parents want to continue with the flipped math classrooms.
It's great. Mike, we are almost out of time. I need to know where we're going, how you're going to expand it, and then anything else that our three very enthusiastic.
Right.
Yes.
You know, Denise and her colleagues as classroom teachers are able to be successful because we're able to have a couple technology integration specialist staff in place. Both Wayne and Kristen are classroom teachers. They get that. They get the technology piece as well. The data is significant enough for us to mildly move ahead, so we're adding some additional teachers in. We'll finish out the rest of this year. We'll decide a little bit more this summer where to go next. I'm sure we'll be presenting to the board a little bit more on our data. The board's been very supportive up to this point, which we're very thankful for, as well as the superintendent. But I think we're going to see this expand. We're seeing it in the region, in the state, and nationally expand as well. Stillwater happens to be leading the way in some respects right now, thanks to some of the quality folks we have here. So we will see it expand. We're going to look toward resources to continue to be able to do this.
What do you need in terms of resources?
Well, two things. Our staffing piece is the most important right now. The actual technology itself is secondary. We had a number of the technical pieces in place so we could essentially do this program for not much. We actually had a generous grant from the partnership plan, as well as one from another provider that helped us to do some of our staff development and buy a little bit of technology. So the technical piece is vitally important as well. So.
Okay, we literally probably 30 seconds. Anyone want to add something in 30 seconds? Kristen?
I just think that if anybody has questions, to feel free to contact, I don't know, someone.
How exciting.
Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. But
and there's in our presentations that we've done, we've said too that the magic is not in the videos. The magic is in having the teacher have the time to work with the kids individually or small group.
Wayne, you got awfully quiet. Was it the 30 seconds that threw you?
That was the 30 seconds that threw me.
Anything?
I want to make sure they had the lessons.
Right. You know, Denise has about 75 minutes a day for math instruction with her kids. Due to the flip, she's got an additional 35 to 45 minutes a day. She can personalize her work.
Isn't that
with
something?
her kids.
When
We think
you
that's
think
a
about
big,
it?
big value.
So great benefit. Anything negative, you guys, that were, you know, I mean, everything sounds just so wonderful. Anything negative you can think of right now?
There really isn't when kids come in not
Well, come on,
having
it's a lot of
been-
work for teachers to get started.
Oh, I
Yeah.
would think so.
It's a
It
lot
was.
of work. That I would say nothing negative on the student side, but yeah, it's a lot of work up front. Next year is always going to be a lot easier. A lot of those resources will be in place, but students will still come in not having done their homework, not watched their video.
What happens then?
We usually send them to the lab and they do it then,
good.
but then they just lose that amount, whatever time it takes them to watch it, they lose that with me.
Right.
But I understand that things happen and
Sure.
not every single night, every single student will do their homework.
Teachers are a hardworking group of people, and the teachers who are participating in flipped classroom are putting in an extra amount of work on the front end, as was mentioned here, to get videos and quizzes and all of the mechanisms in place and this sort of thing. But what we anticipate is in year 2, when all these videos are already in place and our processes are already in place, then all of a sudden the attention will be focused on a whole different thing, and that is the quality of and the type of instruction that's happening in the classroom with the individual students to differentiate those experiences.
And despite all the extra work, all of the flipped teachers do not want to go back to the traditional classroom.
Oh,
which
that's
is
true.
very interesting. In fact, you want them speeding up and expanding it, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I'm now flipping my 4th grade class.
Absolutely,
So now I've
right.
got both of them, yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here. How exciting. And it was
Thank
very
you.
exciting for me to see it in the national newspaper and that. Congratulations, and
Thank you.
I wish you great continued success and even more topic subject areas that you're
Thank
able
you.
to do it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thank you.